What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, we're keeping this conversation going. How do you stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos? What are your foundations, right? What keeps both of your feet on the ground and not get carried away with all this noise and chaos? That's what Jaimie and my hope is that this podcast offers that opportunity for you to ask that question. What are my foundations? What keeps me grounded? And then we hope that by the guests that we bring on, it is giving you the time and the space to answer that question. You might agree or disagree with the guests. I don't care. You might agree or disagree with me. Again, I don't care if the outcome is that it's giving you the opportunity to reflect. It's causing you to answer that question for yourselves. In my experience, being grounded and having those clear grounding principles, practices. I'm talking in general terms because obviously I know what mine are. It makes the difference. It's a game changer in reference to us staying healthy, both mentally, spiritually, and physically. So today's guest, I don't even know how to describe this guy. There's so many titles I could throw on him to describe him. Bradley Carpenter, he was an Oakland police officer, lateraled up here to Washington State and finished his career. Then he became a coffee connoisseur, owned a chain that did franchises up here in Washington State. The man knows coffee. He's a surfer, enjoys catching waves. He talks about that in his book, Riding One More Wave, and just being an author now. Again, he has a book, so he's an author, public speaker, fascinating man. And if you watch the interview or listen to the interview all the way to the end, you'll also see that he's pretty darn perceptive as well, to picking up on flipping the script a little bit and him being the interviewer and me being the interviewee for a little bit. But before we get into the interview, folks, I want to talk about Deer Hollow. Deer Hollow is that PTSD recovery center that I checked myself into about a year ago when I was struggling. And I would love to tell you that it's all about rainbows and unicorns and candy canes. And that I went there and it was almost like Club Med. But none of that would be true. Parts of me absolutely hated it, at least at the beginning, because it was hard. Because I was uncovering decades of trauma, and that hurts. That hurts. Now, walking away from it, and the reason why I talk about Deer Hollow is their clinical staff, the other staff that make up, from their cooks to their techs, engaged me in a way that I needed, and that facilitated the healing process to begin. And I'm still doing the healing process, folks. Going somewhere for 30, 45, even 60 days isn't going to fix you, but it is going to teach you the necessary skills to unpack past trauma and then to be able to move ahead through life as you experience life, right? And as you experience other losses or trauma. If you haven't checked them out before, folks, check down in the show notes. I'll have contact information for Deer Hollow. It's worth you knowing about either for yourself or for someone else. With that, folks, let's get into this interview with Bradley Carpenter. Bradley Carpenter, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Appreciate you coming on the show, brother. You have a very interesting biography. You and I don't know each other personally, but as I read your book and as I got into who you are, a lot of life experience. And so I'm really excited about this episode because I feel like you bring a lot of perspectives to the table. For listeners that maybe don't know you, they haven't read your book, if you could give a brief introduction of who you are.
Well, great. Yeah, I have a lot of life experience, which just means I'm getting flipping old, but trying to trying to keep the old man out. Um, I was a police officer, 23 years. Started out in Oakland, California, and prior to that, I was a son of a army officer. My father was career military, spent some 33 years in the army. One of those guys who graduated high school and jumped into World War II and was in every airborne assault through World War II, walked across France, Bastogne, did the whole 9 yards, and then got
Wow.
out of the army and was called back in for Korea. Got shot up in Korea, then stayed in and was a lieutenant colonel his first trip in Vietnam and a full colonel the second trip in Vietnam. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as military brats do, we traveled all over the country, but we always stopped at pools. We hit every ocean that you can imagine. As far as we were in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, um, Texas on the Gulf. We were in California. We were up in Washington State. Everywhere there was a place of water, my dad always stopped. And I think I learned some of his coping skills by being in the water. So that's kind of what I bring in this book is some of the coping skills that I learned through my father and then later in my life.
And that really resonates with me. My wife and we joke, I say we joke, we're also serious that the most magical place on earth is Cannon Beach, Oregon. And there's just something about the ocean in general, but then what that place has become to us, both from visiting that as children, honeymooning there, her and I, 26 years ago. And then now we go back there 2, 3 times a year, sometimes more if we can afford it. And there's just a peace that we find on the shore in the water that's like no other to us.
And totally agree with that.
Yeah. So maybe let's start with policing. What got you? I mean, was it your dad's influence just because of that military, paramilitary type connection to organization, or do you feel like it was something else that drew you to being a police officer in California?
Oh, I had absolutely no calling to be a police officer. In fact, I didn't really like the cops. They suspended my license when I was in high school. Um, I no idea, and just kind of one of those happenstance. I was teaching high school in California, and it was just the wrong time. They were laying off. They ended up laying off over 10,000 teachers that year. So I got a pink slip 4 semesters in a row. Got hired back because I would teach, coach anything, but writing was on the wall, and there was a civil service exam. It was one of those, oh, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, I'm a cop, and that was kind of surprising. So it wasn't a very well thought out plan.
But it was a way to make a living, and
It
right.
was. I was recently married, and um, it was really a 1 day test where I took the written test. Then they drag you into a oral board and offered me a job. And then going home that night and telling my wife, who was married to a high school teacher who was studying for his LSATs, that hey, I'm an Oakland, California cop.
She's
So
like, "What?"
I think I had to open a bottle of wine first, but yeah, that was a odd conversation.
What was it like being a cop in Oakland?
It was a little bit mind blowing. I had such one of those magical childhoods. I can't claim any bad in my childhood. I was one of those kids who parents were married just short of 70 years before my dad passed. We absolutely had no worries, no food worries or housing worries or any problems at all. I had 3 older sisters, which meant that I never had a fight in my life. Those girls ruled the neighborhood, so I never had a fist fight until I became a cop. And when you put this white, I don't want to say entitled, but pretty dang close to entitled kid into East Oakland with the violence of the 1980s, it was a little bit mind blowing.
Wow. And how long did you stay there in Oakland before you lateraled up here to Washington State?
12 years.
Wow. And then what was the catalyst to the move?
My wife.
As
I
in, she said we're moving, or did you guys split up down there, and then that's why you moved, or what? What happened?
I was on a detail that yeah, nothing ever came of it, but we were kind of chasing down some bad guys, and the recommendation was to relocate the families, and so
Oh
they
wow.
um, my wife came up here when my parents had retired to Washington State and stayed with them for a few weeks. They went over to Orcas Island, had a great time. And when I came out of doing what I was doing, made a phone call, said, "Hey, I'm heading back to Oakland. You want to meet?" And she goes, "No, um, you need to grab a sports coat and you need to shave off that crazy beard and come up here." My mother and wife had looked at the newspaper and saw that Gig Harbor was looking for a lateral detective. And they went down, applied, signed my name, and had an application and got me an interview.
So hold the phone. The first time it's this random thought of, maybe I'll do that. And the second time you don't even apply. The second time your mom and wife apply for you.
Yeah, I was kind of like the Forrest Gump of law enforcement, I think.
Oh wow. And Gig Harbor. I mean, I'm familiar with the greater Tacoma area. I was stationed at McCord Air Force Base or McCord Field now for a while. Friends that lived in Gig Harbor. So huge difference. I mean, we are talking about, I mean, did you feel like you were in Mayberry?
Yep, a little bit.
Yeah, very good. Well, a beautiful community. I mean, Gig Harbor is absolutely gorgeous. So, you finished out your career there, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And then when you were complete with a law enforcement career, what, like when you decided to retire, were you stepping into something immediately, or was there kind of a transition period where you retired for a bit before moving on to the next life
Well,
adventure?
at the time, I knew I wanted to get into a kind of a retail situation, and so started opening up coffee shops. And it's what do cops know best? Coffee shops. So opened up coffee shops, and then it was just the right time, I guess, because then we had an explosion of people who wanted to franchise, and so we started franchising and got a little crazy there.
Okay, so you didn't actually own each of the individual ones. You were opening up franchises.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
we owned five, and then we ended up franchising another 18.
How about the one in University Place? Was that yours or was that a
Yes.
franchise?
Yes, ours.
Loved it. It was my favorite when I lived in Tacoma.
Yeah, that was our first one. Yeah.
Was it seriously?
27th Street there.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay. That's awesome. So yeah, my wife and I, again, we lived on McCord Air Force Base, but we went to a church in University Place there, and the Forza was right near our church, and absolutely loved
Right.
grabbing coffee there. So I mean, just it was again, as I learned more about you, these connections, it put a smile on my face that, oh my gosh. So at what point, I mean, police officer turned entrepreneur, coffee guru. I don't know if you like that title or not that I just threw on you. At what point do you start getting this crazy idea of writing a book?
Well, it was, years ago, I had written down a few thousand words, and I showed it to someone, and they were kind of like, "Oh, hell no, you don't want anybody to read that." Um, and then I found my wife had passed away by this point, and I found a person who came across it and read it, and she kept going like, "Hey, I need to see more. I need to see more. I need to see more." So I kept writing, kept writing, kept writing. All of a sudden, we had a book.
Wow. Wow, what a story. I've had a similar experience. I've wrote down at least the first half of my career, and and I shared it with an English teacher, someone who I was friends with, and he actually gave me the initial same reaction of lock this up. You don't want people reading this. And at the time, I was talking about struggling with PTSD
Right.
and having some intrusive thoughts of me killing myself. So I mean, I get what he was saying. It definitely made me feel vulnerable at the time when I was still on the job. Um, but it was also therapeutic. I don't know. Did you find that at all as you wrote about Officer Jackson?
I,
Was
I think so. I mean, you could you open those boxes, you look inside those boxes, but for me, it was a way to look inside the box and then put that box on the shelf, and then open another box, and then put that box on the shelf, and learn how to just kind of let's take a look at it. Let's rethink about the whole thing. What I could have done better. What lessons did I learn from that, and then put it back.
Yeah. And I think we don't do that a lot as guys. I mean, you did it because you chose this as a hobby, whatever you want to call it. I did it actually at the beginning of a therapy process where I was working with a therapist and I started writing stuff down. But I don't know that we as guys, especially within a kind of a type A personality cop persona, typically get into journaling or writing.
All right.
Yeah. What have you had the opportunity to just connect with officers, with people, with some of this chaos? You know, because that's the reality is within policing. At least that was my experience. I'm a third generation cop, and so I had an idea of what I was getting into, but you really don't have an idea until you're wearing the belt,
You
until you
don't.
have,
No.
until you have the badge on your chest and you're stepping through doorways. Um, you don't totally understand. Have you had cops reach out to you because of you sharing what you did in your writings?
Yeah, and I've had I would say, probably the majority of people who have purchased the book are law enforcement or friends or family of law enforcement. So and I've always said I'll meet anytime, anywhere for a cup of coffee, and so I've had over a dozen encounters where we spend a couple hours in a coffee shop talking about the trials, tribulations, and what I believe some of the coping behaviors can be. One of the things I learned in this journey of also doing some research is that it's a little bit shocking, but the average person will experience between 2 to 3 traumatic events in their lifetime. And a police officer who works the size of a city of Oakland in a 10-year period will experience between 300 and 360 traumatic events. So if you don't learn those coping behaviors, you're a flipping mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you're going to find some coping behaviors that are maladaptive, right? That are just not healthy and
Right.
they're going to mess up, cause problems. What were yours? I mean, I know you talk about you've already mentioned learning from your dad, the power of being out on the in the water. Can you talk about what your coping mechanisms have been?
Well, yeah, and I didn't, when you look back, you're going like, wow, that was pretty cool. There's so many things I didn't realize, but I had an awesome wife. Um, there was a period where I was suffering the night sweats, where you wake up and it just looks like somebody had dumped a bucket of water on the sheets, just going through the night sheets. And I don't know how my wife understood at the time, but she knew that my my jam was going down to Half Moon Bay and being in the water on every day off or chance I could. So we had this like 5 foot tall water fountain in the backyard. She emptied the water fountain, dragged it into the bedroom, refilled it, and I came home and it sounded like a water pipe had broken. I was going, "What is going on?" But she had this water fountain in the bedroom. Is I mean, acoustic camouflage. I don't even think it was a term back then, but she understood that the soothing sound of the water heals. And she set that up in her bedroom, and I slept like a baby that first night. And I still have a water fountain in my bedroom.
It's just a lot easier nowadays, right?
Yeah. So, just that, and it's not, people might confuse it with white noise, but white noise is just a background. Acoustic camouflage with the sound of the water does something where it heals you inside. So that's, that was my first recommendation that I found that I found by accident because my wife discovered it. But that was kind of a changing moment for us.
Yeah, really, for sure. Do you still get out on the water?
I live part time down in right above Puerto Vallarta, so I spend the time Nueva Vallarta and Salida as much as I can.
Yeah, I love it. What were, I mean, you alluded to it. You didn't go into specifics. Do you feel comfortable talking about some of those jobs, those assignments that you had
Yes.
down in Oakland,
Yeah.
especially the ones that really caused you to need to move?
Well, and I didn't realize the need to move because I thought I was winning the war. I thought I could win the war. And when the chief of Gig Harbor came down to do a background check and talk to some of the people down there, he goes, "Yeah, you're probably just pissing in the ocean down here." I was kind of like, "No, I really thought I was making a difference." But it was something. One of the shocking events was San Francisco Chronicle had did a study at that time, and they said that a average a black male between the ages of 18 and 20 had a better chance of surviving Vietnam at the height of the Tet Offensive than they did a weekend in Oakland. I mean, so
Wow.
violence was flipping wild.
Yeah.
We didn't have black children who were hoping to grow up to be a firefighter or a teacher or an astronaut. They just wanted to grow up. So it was pretty violent. In my time there, we had 9 police officers killed, and then I was trying to find the numbers, but it was roughly 36 were permanently retired with disabilities in that time period. So it was rough, it was violent, and you keep fighting through it because it's what you do at the time. And you hate giving up, and I almost felt like giving up moving to Washington.
Yeah. How did you reconcile that?
It was just such a different relief. Um, I think as soon as I passed California coming into Oregon, I just felt all the weight coming off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Just it was a lot more relaxing.
And you write in the book about not just doing the job. I mean, there, and I don't want to shame anyone for this. I think showing up every day in uniform, ready to work, ready to work hard to serve the community, that's noble. It's taking it to another level when you're showing up on your off time to build relationships. And when it comes to, I was literally doing a podcast episode yesterday with a gal here in my community. And while I don't think I ever arrested her, I know I arrested her husband a number of times, and we were joking about how there used to be good guys and bad guys, and that line was very, very, very black and white when I first got hired. And while there is true evil in this world, I believe there's also a lot of folks that are doing some bad things, and and are kind of doing the best they can. Um, and her whole goal is to try to mend the relationship with the gang involved street wise individuals and the police, because when there's a homicide she wants people cooperating with the police, and she wants the police to earn people's respect by showing up as human beings, not as these robots. And we just had a beautiful conversation, but it takes time, it takes real relationship building, and that's what I read of Officer Jackson in your experience is showing up and playing basketball. Was that easy? Did that take you having to give yourself a pep talk to do this, or was it just who you were as a person?
I was stubborn as heck and definitely wanted to win that neighborhood. I mean, the beat I took over was only, I think it was like 6 blocks by about 5 blocks. So it wasn't
Wow.
very big,
Yeah.
but you can never get from one end to the other end on a shift. It was just too busy, and it was filled with what we used to have back then, the housing projects. And the parks were that was the hub. The basketball in East Oakland, is fierce. I mean, look at all the NBA point guards, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, there's a lot of studs who came out of there, and there's a lot of guys who are better than them who never graduated high school.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I thought, I always wanted to be a basketball player. I stopped at 6'1" and no jump shot, so I'm not going to make it. But I always loved basketball. Played high school basketball. Played 1 year of JV college, but basketball was my thing, and I was confident and went out there. And yeah, the first game was just brutal. playing 5-on-5, and I thought 9 people were trying to block my shot every time. But it took a little bit while to get accepted, but they finally accepted it. And then eventually, I had some other cops join me, and when they joined me, it just turned everything around. We had twins who actually played college basketball together, and we were we held our own. So, and that's, when you can't call a foul for about the first 3 or 4 games, because then you look like a sissy, but you get just take the lumps. And I think that's what built a lot of credibility.
How did you convince other cops? I'm just being real. Like, it's hard. It's hard in our profession to not draw those lines that I was talking about with Jennifer yesterday. The good guys and bad guys. You know what I'm saying? The us and them.
Yeah.
How did you convince other officers that, hey, this was worth our effort?
It got out there pretty quick, and it's in our department at that time. It was, you pretty much every cop was an athlete, not so much the day, but um, you know, my best friend came out with me almost immediately because he thought I was flipping crazy, and he was just there with a couple of guns to watch my back and didn't play basketball. But it quickly outgrew, and there's a lot of guys who love playing basketball, and so let's play basketball, get some beers, and have some barbecue. And
Yeah. You got to eat food, right? We might as well do it together.
yeah,
I've seen that to be a huge piece of building relationships when we can break some bread together. I've seen it in my personal life with friend gatherings, but I've also seen it with the agency that I just retired from, Kennewick. We recognized that there were some demographics that we didn't have relationship with, and so our plan was, let's go out and have a barbecue. Like, let's bring the food
Mhm.
and have some music and have some frisbees or whatever else. And we've had some really successful events. We've had some other events that were, kind of less successful. Usually, the ingredient for us was having that community leader that would vouch for us, the community member that would tell people, "Hey, come on out, you're coming," and then we would have all these people, and just the opportunity to build relationship over food. Was that a big piece? I know you just mentioned it, but did you see that as being kind of that binding thing because everyone got to eat?
Yeah, and Oakland is famous for the barbecue, and so it was just always, grabbing some barbecue and grabbing some drinks and setting them up on the picnic tables, because you know it was tough getting drafted by anybody. Pick up basketball. The winter stays on, and then the next group comes on, and there's always somebody who's picking the next 4 or 5 to come on, and being last pick was always hard on my ego, but I had to say, "Hey, if we lose, I'll buy lunch." And then they said, "Okay, well, we'll we'll bring you on."
Okay, I like that. I like that. How about when you got to Gig Harbor? What was different then? I think anyone that in the policing field, just the two names, Oakland and Gig Harbor, they know there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
But how did that play out
Um,
in your relationship building?
trees,
That's for sure.
trees was the one of the biggest. Did you freeze up?
Oh,
Are you there,
you and I are freezing a little bit, but the
Chris?
audio is good.
Are you there? You're there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. Trees. It was kind of a little bit of a surprise for me. I went out way out in Crescent Valley, and to back up a deputy on a domestic call. The husband had ran into the woods and may or may not have been armed, but we weren't sure. And I realized I don't like trees. I'm used to going down alleyways in Oakland, or I was in the barrios in Mexico, and I kind of felt comfortable. Out in the trees, it's dark. I wasn't, there's things behind every tree. Um, Lions and tigers. I don't know if they have that in Gig Harbor, but the next morning I went out and bought the two biggest flashlights I could find at a one of those little Blumenthal cop stores. And
Yeah.
but I really felt I had time in Gig Harbor. As far as if you had a burglary in Oakland, it was like, unless you know who the person who did it, we don't have time to investigate it. But in Gig Harbor, you can go through, you can knock on every door and then come back. If there wasn't somebody home, you can look for witnesses. You could, just get a small tip and develop it. You can spend a week on a burglary, and you can go through all the pawn shops in Tacoma, and you can try to track the stuff down. I mean, you could really spend time, and I felt like I had some quality investigations and was able to accomplish probably more in Gig Harbor. And I think Gig Harbor expects you to get their stuff back too.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be able to do a really full investigation instead of just triage patchwork.
Yeah. Wow. So a very full law enforcement career. Um, Coffee entrepreneur. If I understand correctly, you've gotten out of that business. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was too much work.
And now you give talks. You travel around talking to groups about your experiences, about your book. Uh, are you how active are you in doing keynote and training sessions?
Probably just kind of started it up. The book's only been out for about 6 weeks or so. Yeah, I'm kind of doing what I call the Rotary Tour now, where I've got some Rotary clubs that I'm scheduled to speak at. And then when I'm not, I'm down in Mexico.
Man, I love that. So that is your most magical place on earth, then, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I've got one of those. It's kind of like a timeshare. It's a fractional, but allows me to have 10 to 12 weeks down there. And I'm still up here because I'm taking care of my 98-year-old mother. So I can't be down in Mexico full time, but
Yeah,
as much as I can.
yeah, I love it. When you give keynotes, do you have you like created like these specific talks? Do you tailor it around the audience? What's kind of your approach to that?
Yeah, it's tailored more to the audience, but we talk about you know some of the traumatic events that police officers suffer, and then we talk about some of the coping behaviors that they can have, and you know what the surf therapy may or may not do for them, but and just understanding that the traumatic events that people go through, it's trying to have a little bit of understanding for on each side.
Yeah. For me, even though the beach and the ocean is has that draw and that therapeutic place, just being there, it does for me. For me, I think my equivalent to riding the waves is, or the title "Riding One More Wave," is running one more mile. For whatever reason, getting out there on the street and just running has always offered that opportunity for me to clear my head. I can think about everything and I can think about nothing on a
Right.
run. It just yeah, it's the therapy of hitting the street that has that's been one of my positive coping mechanisms. Now, negative, I got really good at drinking alcohol for a while, Bradley. Yeah, and I'm all about achieving. So like if you're gonna do something, do it right. Um, what what do you think is next in this adventure that you're on, or do you have like this really clear plan of the direction you're heading, or is it like do you plan on writing more books, or is it kind of hey let's just take one day, 1 year, one season at a time?
Yeah, I my mother really enjoyed this book, and she wanted me to finish a book because I'd shown her a few chapters of my father's journey, and so I need to finish that one for her. But otherwise, it's just hey, just whatever the next wave comes in, I'll write it.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know if I've given you the opportunity to talk about other coping mechanisms. I don't think I asked a follow-up question with that. Obviously, the ocean is a big one, being on the waves for you. Have you found other ones that have also been supportive, also helped you kind of with the trauma of the job?
Um, there's breathing exercises that you can do, um, and you know I used to tell people, I listen to a lot of poetry, and then when they try to nail me down, I tell them, well, it's really Jimmy Buffett, but to me, it's poetry. So music, the right genre of music, and yacht rock or Jimmy Buffett. I mean, those tunes just play it. Um, I play a almost passable guitar and do a lot of that Jimmy Buffett type of music. Um, I enjoy that. But breathing exercises is a great coping skill. I remember my academy days when we had somebody come in and talk about coping behaviors, and we're all saying, yeah, shots, beers, and playing pool. Um, and the guy next to me in my academy class was just he was a god of a man. He was a Seattle cop, came down to Oakland, so he had to redo the whole academy again. He didn't realize he'd have to do the whole academy again, but he also was a linebacker for UW and was a linebacker for the 49ers for 3.5 years. So
Oh,
we're,
wow.
we're talking about a stud. And he, they're asking the group, what are your coping skills? He raises his hand. He goes, gardening. And at the time, I thought, well, that's the most damn sissy thing I've ever heard.
You didn't say that to his face, though, did you?
I looked over and I'm going like, that is just sissy. Because, we're 22, 23 at the time, and, men are men,
Yeah, yeah.
or so we thought. But now I'm a master gardener.
I love it.
Yeah, I turned that around, but it's kind of funny because with my work with the DEA, I don't maybe 250 marijuana grows I've taken down, which meant I've interviewed about 250 marijuana growers and kind of learned all their secrets and tricks and their trades. And everybody in the Tacoma area now has always asked me to come over and help them with their garden. So I think I'm responsible for about 14 gardens currently. But yeah, I love gardening, and I'll compete with my salsa against anybody, my tomatoes and onions and peppers. But so yeah, gardening is there's just something about putting your hands in the dirt and creating something.
Yeah, I right now I have a harvest going on, and there's nothing like walking out back. You need an onion, and so you
Yeah.
walk out back and you harvest one right now, right?
And coffee grounds is the biggest secret. If you put coffee grounds around your garden, it keeps all the crawling insects away.
Okay.
And you
Does it-
can get coffee grounds at any espresso shop. Just drive up and say, "Hey, I need a bag of your spent coffee grounds."
Wow. I didn't even think about that. Yes. And do you put that at all into the soil, or do you just layer it on top?
If it's a first time garden, I do put it in the soil,
Okay.
but otherwise, just kind of keep it around the side.
Okay.
And it messes with the colors sometimes if you get it in there. Like if you have white hydrangeas or white roses, it will darken them to a pink or a red. So you kind of, be okay with that. But always use coffee grounds, and that keeps it organic.
Yeah. What other types of things do you enjoy to grow?
Lettuce, tomatoes, onions, peppers, and a lot of flowers.
I like it. I inherited this. I didn't inherit this house. I bought this house that I currently live in from my parents. And just the soil's really good. This used to be a an apple orchard, and
Mm,
so it, if you put it into the ground, it'll grow.
nice.
Little bit of work, and we have some raspberries, and oh wow, there's nothing like I'm making myself some yogurt in the morning for breakfast, and I walk out back and pick a handful of raspberries and come in and rinse them off. They taste better than anything I'm buying in the store. Just absolutely delicious.
And I think that puts a smile on your soul, and that's a great coping behavior.
Yeah. No, absolutely. In this retired gig from law enforcement, I say retired, but I'm still working through my consulting business. I've started dehydrating fruit. I really enjoy that.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Haven't tried that.
yep. I wanted to get a freeze dryer, and my wife looked at the price of almost $4,000, and she's like, "Sweetheart, is there an entry level that we can do for this?" It's like, well, I can get a dehydrator for like 150. She's like, let's try the dehydrator first. And if you rock and roll with that puppy and you enjoy doing it after a year, then let's buy the freeze dryer. And I definitely enjoy it. And my family loves the apples and the bananas. Oh my gosh. Like when those go on sale, I just buy a ton. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be enough into it. Like, I don't know that I'm going to be the dehydrating guy or the freeze dry guy. I mean, it's fun and I enjoy it. I don't know that I enjoy it enough to justify a $4,000 machine. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I will. The other thing I love to do is cook. It sounds like you enjoy cooking. You were mentioning some of the things you make from your garden.
Yes.
What are
Yeah.
what are your favorite things to cook?
Kind of a wide range. I like Mexican. My street tacos, ceviche. I think I make a pretty good ceviche, but I'll do fish. I'll do Italian. Um, kind of hopefully a wide range.
Yeah. I have different palettes in my house with my daughters. I have one that's quasi vegetarian. She started adding some meat back into her diet. And so it's a challenge. It's a fun challenge, but my wife is a school teacher, and so she's at work during the week, and I do whatever I'm doing work wise, and then I am a house husband. That's what I call myself. I'm a house husband.
Nice.
Her friends joke around with her that she goes, "How do you get one of those?" I'm like, "Hey, we're not easy to come by, right? Like, kind of a commodity out here." I love it, brother. I don't know what else. What else is I use the word heart a lot, and what I'm meaning is passion.
Yeah.
What other heart or passions do you have in this season of life?
In I don't want to sound like I'm, but I think reaching back through my conversations with a lot of guys who've worked in law enforcement for the years, there's a lot of broken bodies, and you know, and on the team that I worked with uh, for a long period of time, we had some suicides, and I just really don't want to see any more. And the understanding that you have with suicide is, I truly believe that none of them wanted to die; they just didn't know how to live.
Yeah,
And so, we want to talk about, make sure you're there, you're present. If somebody makes that phone call or somebody sends that text, make sure that you can answer, you can respond, um, because there's some broken bodies out there. And so I'm kind of hoping, I know this book has triggered a lot of people who have read it, but I think it's also helped them understand that there's a way back from some of those dark places.
yeah. Wow, well said. And yeah, I could see it being a trigger for people because they have their own experiences this that your book can uncover for them, right? And now they're experiencing an emotional or even a physical sensation, speaking from my own experience, that is connected to some other past trauma from the job.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hear a bagpipe without thinking of, one, two, or several funerals that you've attended. Um,
Yeah. Honestly, brother, because of the job I worked in our persons crimes, which was homicide and kidnapping and rape. And I did that for 2 years and 2.5 years. And then I switched over to property crimes. We were big enough to where we had two separate units. And then eventually I was a detective sergeant for our street crimes team. And so just a lot of death. I don't do funerals. I, I've been to a couple officer funerals. Um, I don't do them because I just death by itself is really hard for me. It wasn't when I started the job. When I started the job, it was fascinating, actually. I don't mean that in like a perverse way, but it was fascinating. Like I had a job to do, right? This was a puzzle. I was going to solve it.
yeah,
And when you experience it, just like the stat you referenced at the beginning, when we experience it at volume, that's not normal for the human body and mind. Um, I got to where I just couldn't handle it anymore.
yeah, yeah. Then what?
Yeah.
So, that's why you need to find whatever that jam is, whether it be jogging, whether it be a dog with a walk in the woods, whether it be gardening, whether it be coming down to Mexico and surfing with me, whatever that is. But you can't just go to the bar like we did in Oakland And those bars in Oakland were awesome. There was two cop bars, and they would you just knock three times, they'd open it up and then lock it because it's past closing time, and just cops are inside. So
Yeah.
that is not the best coping behavior.
No, being a cop's kid, I remember my dad became a cop later in life. He'd worked in the beer business before that. And I remember my mom telling me dad was at choir practice. And I was like, I didn't know dad sang. Dad and his friends sit around singing. That really interesting. And it took me a lot of years before I realized that choir practice was, they were at a bar and they were coping. They were decompressing from the day or the week's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of cases of beer and sitting underneath the bridge in Oakland, taking shots at sharks swimming by. That's what you did when you were in your early 20s, but doesn't work so well for the body later on.
Yeah. I am seeing, at least here in Washington State, and I should say more specifically here in the Tri City area, I'm seeing a younger generation that is more in tune with the importance of physical fitness, more in tune with the importance of, although alcohol is still part of our culture, um,
Yeah.
uh, they're more in tune with, hey, there needs to be something else. And I'm excited for that just because I don't want the next generation having to walk out the door and check themselves into a PTSD recovery center, right? Like I want them to ride this proverbial wave, this job, as long as they want to and enjoy it and be in control the whole time, and then walk out the door uh, when their time's right, just because they want something different. Yeah. I think you being willing to take the calls, I think that's a message that we really have to push out there. Hey, I'm willing to take your call. Message me. I mean, you have your phone number up here on your name here on the Zoom, the YouTube version of this podcast. Um, you're obviously putting yourself out there. Call me. Don't battle this in silence.
Right.
Yeah. If you, I mean, you've already said answer the call. Try to be open. What I mean, there's people out there that get advanced training as peer support, and they're maybe a little bit more positioned to answer those calls. But I don't think it takes a peer support member to answer the call. I think any of us can answer one of our partners' calls.
I hope so.
How do you show up though? That's difficult, right? Like it just is. It's difficult to know how to show up for other people.
Um, yeah, but you got to, and you just got to be there. If somebody texts you and says, "Hey, I mean, you got to understand what that took for them to reach out. And if they're reaching out, man, you got to reach back just a little bit further because, I always say if someone sends you a text, call them and just show up. Uh, Showing up is such a huge thing because at that point they're feeling like nobody understands, nobody's listening, and how do I move forward? So it's just listening.
Just listening. I think that's it right there, brother. And I think we don't show up sometimes because we don't know what to say.
Right.
And
And
you don't,
there isn't, and they can go through training by many many doctors. There is no right thing to say.
yeah,
Probably some wrong things to say, but there is no truly right thing to say. So it's showing up and listening and understanding and just helping them learn how to live. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but you know whether that's for me, it's a walk on the beach. There ain't nothing better than putting your toes in the sand. But others, it might be, walk in the woods. It might be, climbing a mountain. Might be running the one more mile. But finding out what that, what the bad trigger is. So it's trying to find the right triggers.
yeah. I like that. I think that's well said, brother. Hey, for listeners that want to check out this book that we've been talking about, where can they pick up a copy of Writing One More Wave?
Well, my website is what I prefer. If you use my website, then you get an autographed book back in a couple of days. My website is writingonemorewave.com, the title of the book. Otherwise, it's plastered across some 53 websites as far as, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Costco's and such.
Love it. And what are ways for people to connect with you? Obviously, the website. Are there other ways that you welcome people to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah. Now, my email is Brad Carpenter, and then the initials PV, which stands for Puerto Vallarta. So it's Brad Carpenter, P like Paul, V like Victor, at gmail.com. You can also reach out to me, though, through that website. It has a message contact.
I love it, brother. Brother, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff. I really appreciate you giving me so much of yours.
I appreciate the opportunity and was really looking forward to hearing more about your story.
I love it. Like you're wanting to hear more about it right now. Is that what you're saying?
If you got time, yeah.
Let's do it. Hey, listeners, we're gonna go a little bit longer. I like this. Boy, my story that has gotten more complex in the last 30 days.
No, you've had a tough month.
Yeah. Well, my story again, I'm a third generation cop that was just super excited to become a police officer. I was a police explorer when I was in the Air Force. I would be assigned to the armory, and when I was done arming up all the cops, and I was a Air Force cop as well. I could sit inside the armory and play video games if I wanted. Like that was me doing my job. Uh, Theoretically, I could take a nap because it was a secure facility. Nobody could get in without me letting them in. Instead, I would call the flight sergeant, kind of the duty supervisor, and I'd say, "Can I come out and work as a cop?" So that's how excited I was to be a cop growing up watching dad do it. So, yeah, I got hired at Linwood. That's where I started my career and absolutely loved living in North Seattle and I-5 and Highway 99 cutting through your city. There was always something to do, right? There was always criminals to chase. The bad guy, good guy game was full in force and loved it. Lateral.
Was Steve Jensen the chief up there at the time?
Yes, he was. Yeah, and he was from Oakland. That's right. He was from
Yeah, he
Oakland.
was he was the lieutenant in charge of the academy when I went through the academy.
Wow, small world. Totally forgot that that's where he was from originally.
Yeah.
Yep. He's the chief that hired me. He was a great chief for me. We had good policy, good equipment. When I left, after just 2 years, I lateraled over here to the Tri Cities, and he was great about it. Like I was leaving because of family. I
Mhm.
wasn't leaving because I was disgruntled or anything else like that. And so he pulled me into his office and said, "Hey, Chris, I'm going to try to convince you to stay." And so he gave it his best plug. And I was like, Chief, I totally respect that, but this is for my family where we're going to raise our kids, being around grandparents and aunts and uncles. And he's like, totally get it. If it doesn't work out, give me a call.
Good.
And just having that offer, because within law enforcement, at least from my experience, if you lateral out of an agency, there are some agencies that you are now blacklisted.
Yeah, pretty
You would
much.
you would never be accepted back. They take it as a personal offense, a lack of loyalty almost. So he was great about it. Lateraled over here, became a detective pretty quick just because there was an opening and no one else wanted to do it. And I was investigating gang crimes and child abuse. So death, violence, and child abuse was my Monday to Friday. And just within a couple years of it, it kicked my butt, and I started having those heart attack feeling anxiety attacks. I actually called 911 the first time. And thankfully, I was also peer support. So I definitely kind of had a little understanding of what was happening. And so I saw a counselor. I stopped being on the SWAT team. I stopped investigating child crimes. I simplified life, and life was good for about 13 years. And then this last, what was that?
That's a good run.
Oh no, I'm super happy with the fact that I was able to heal back up enough
Mhm.
to be good for another 13 years. I could have left the job back in 2010. But back here in the summer of 2023, I was a community services sergeant. So I'm supervising our school resource officers and just came out of being a detective sergeant for our street crimes team. So I'd been having a lot of death, starting to get back into child abuse cases that I'm not leading, but I'm supervising. And I felt it welling up within me. Uh, I had the mindset, I think similar to you, that if I'm driving a black and white, it doesn't matter what my current duty assignment is or how many stripes are on my sleeve. It's my job to go on those calls. So I had a breathing stoppage and I'm in charge of the school resource officer. So I'm bouncing from school to school just to check on my folks, see if they have what they need. And I'm leaving a school and a breathing stoppage pops out and I go, I'm the closest officer by 60 seconds. And if you know anything about CPR, you know 60 seconds means everything. And I thought to myself for just a moment, I don't have to go and no one will know.
Yeah.
We don't got GPS on our cars. And I had to talk before as a young cop, man, no one had to talk me into going to that call. Lights and sirens, hair on fire. I probably actually drove a little bit too fast sometimes because I wanted to save the world. And, uh, and I had to talk myself in that day, Bradley, to go into that call. So drank a lot of alcohol that night. And it was shortly after that I started to have another anxiety attack type thing come on me. So shortly after that, I checked into a PTSD recovery center. Um, did a lot of hard work there. Wow. Oh my gosh. I honestly think I think we should have about every 6 or 7 years. I think all police officers should be going to some kind of retreat, some kind of opportunity just to be offline for a period of time and to really deal with the
Yeah.
stuff.
Teachers and quite a few tech companies give sabbaticals.
Yes.
Why not us?
McDonald's gives sabbaticals.
Really? Okay. All
I've
right.
done yeah, I've done a little research into this one because the concept of a sabbatical I think could be a game changer. I think it could save our state and our country millions of dollars in labor and industry claims and injuries and I think we would keep folks on the job longer.
Yeah. Can you
Um,
add a surf camp to that maybe and send them
I
my way?
I think we could totally include a surf camp. I think that's, the places that I advocate for. I'm wearing a Deer Hollow hat right now. That's the place I went. I like to talk an awful lot about Warriors Heart down in San Antonio, Texas. They have a lot of skills, hands-on activities that is a piece of their therapy. And I think that's very wise. Whether you're building something with wood, whether you're learning a skill like surfing, maybe playing a musical instrument, I think there's a lot of therapeutic value in that. So it was sometime after I got back from the PTSD Recovery Center, still doing intensive outpatient therapy, that I made the decision. And it was a tough decision because, I mean, my livelihood was at stake. I wasn't sure if the state was going to medically retire me. My wife and I were talking about selling the house, moving into a trailer. Uh, and I felt still like a failure as a man.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I have an amazing wife, and she continued to tell me, I don't want you going back on the job. I'm seeing a different man right now as you're healing, and I want this version of you, not the injured version. So yeah, separated, retired November 2023, and I was already doing some consulting work, teaching for the state and teaching for local businesses. And I've been rocking and rolling with that. And life has been an absolute dream being a stay-at-home husband and stay-at-home dad.
Oh, good.
And then July 2nd,
Yeah.
my daughter died. And so
Can't imagine.
it's been tough. Uh, at the same time, I've been absolutely amazed by my local community, uh, just their love, their support, the meals. At the beginning of this podcast, I kept hitting mute on my end because someone was mowing my front lawn. I mow my own lawn. I don't pay for that. I enjoy it actually. But I have a buddy that owns a lawn care business, and he was like, "Hey, for 3 weeks, I'm going to mow your lawn." It just is what it is. I'm doing it, and he's had his crew come out here for the last 3 weeks, and he's been mowing my lawn. The financial support, oh my gosh, the community has been so amazing with that. I actually said no. Specifically, I had some cop wives create a GoFundMe, and I was like, no, absolutely not. Tell them to shut it down. And my wife and my 18-year-old were like, stop, stop, dad, stop, husband. Why are we going to tell them to shut it down? Because we have money in our savings account. We can do this. Yes, we do. And we don't know what we're even in for yet. We've never experienced this before. We don't know what type of financial obligations we're going to have. And so that's just taken tons of stress off our shoulders. And it's made us feel comfort just knowing how many people. My wife had some of her students donate $5 or $10. These are kids that don't have that. $5 or $10 is probably what they have to their name right now,
Yeah.
right? They gave us 100% of their money.
Yeah. What grade
And
is she teaching?
she teaches freshmen and juniors.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, it's been tough from talking to some of my friends who have lost their wives young. Some of them have told me, one specifically told me, Chris, the pain doesn't go away. You just get stronger.
Yeah.
You're going to be more capable next year to carry this, but it's still going to hurt. And at first, I kind of wanted to say, hey, thanks a lot for the pep talk. And then I thought about it and I thought, I don't want it to stop hurting. This is my baby. This is the girl that made me a dad. Probably one of my proudest titles that I get to wear. I don't want it to stop hurting. Like, I want to be able to live life and have joy, right? I want to go out for runs and feel great. I want to still go to Cannon Beach, Oregon and love the ocean, but I don't want it to not hurt.
And at some point it'll turn. My wife passed away. Gosh, it's been over 20 years, but she was crazy fanatic number one fan for the Beach Boys. And still, when a Beach Boys song comes on, it just kind of makes you smile inside. I thought the Beach Boys kind of sucked, but it was her thing. So I'll still listen to a Beach Boys song now and kind of smile inside, knowing that that was her thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Those little reminders that the one of the courses I teach, the instructor cadre got us a wind chime. Um, if they would have said, Chris, tell us one thing you want, wind chime was not on the list.
Right.
And it has this really beautiful engraving on it too, with one of my daughter's sayings.
Hmm.
And it's out back right now. And every time I hear it, I think of my girl.
Yeah.
And even to the point that sometimes I'm like, hey baby, I hear you.
Yeah. And those are the moments to hang on to.
Yeah. So it was funny. I put it up, and within the first 24 hours, my wife's like, I might need you to take that down. And I was like, okay, yeah, you tell me. I'll take it down. And within about another day, my wife's like, leave it up. Leave it up. It was hard at first. Um, and now I'm at a spot that it's a sweet hard. It's still hard, but it's sweet as well. So
Good.
yeah. Another reason I'm glad I'm not on the job right now, because I just told you I don't go to funerals. Well, of course I went to my daughter's
Yeah.
celebration of life service. And I had the capacity to do it because for the last 12 months, I haven't been taken in all of the trauma of our community, right? I've healed myself, gone through this process of healing. So I have more capacity to show up for my family right now. And, I just don't know that I would have had that if I was still on the job. So lots of things to be thankful for in the middle of the chaos and the pain. There's been a lot of perspective moments where we've been like, wow, thank you, God. And for us, it comes back to a faith thing. Our faith is a huge foundation of who we are as people. And so, uh, yes, we've had the opportunity to be thankful and express gratitude um, a number of times.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be one of the focuses. Every morning after my little walk and my first cup of coffee, try to sit on the deck and spend at least 5 minutes just thinking about gratitude, what you're grateful for that day.
Yeah.
If you practice gratitude early in the day, it makes the rest of the day pretty good.
Doesn't it? Just changes your perspective.
It does.
I can sit there and marinate in the problems of life. And there's problems, there's stressors, absolutely for all of us. But then as I move out of that, I carry it with me. Or spending time, and usually I start small, like the hot cup of coffee in my hand. I'm just like, ah, oh, thank you. I love the smell of good coffee.
Right.
And then it just goes from there. Other things that are in my immediate area that I'm thankful for. And then sometimes I start to branch out to relationships and other truths that I know that I'm thankful for. So I appreciate you asking, brother.
Yeah. Well, one heck of a month to come through.
Yeah. Yeah. Brother, I got out of line there a little bit with some of my normal shtick. One thing I didn't say to the listeners, hey, listeners, a little bit ago, Bradley talked to us about ways to connect with him. Those will be down in the show notes, as well as ways to connect with me. So look down in the show notes if you want to connect with either Bradley or I. Both of us are very receptive, especially for folks within the first responder community. But really just to humans in general. If you're struggling, life is tough sometimes. It's heavy. And so if you don't have that person to talk to when you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I can do another day, I don't know if I can do another minute, reach out to one of us, message one of us. And I've taken a number of those calls, and I don't have the answer for you, but I can listen, and I can, if you want to hear it, I can tell you some of the things I've done. So again, Bradley, brother, thank you for your, I'm going to call it a calling. I feel like you're responding to a calling in life. So thank you for being responsive to that calling of being an author and helping others. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Have a great day. Wow, folks, what did you think about that interview with Brad? Man, I appreciated him. I appreciate him for reaching out to me. He gifted me with one of his books, so I had the opportunity to read it before this episode. Really no strings attached. It was after the book that I'm like, yeah, I want to interview this guy. I appreciate there at the end his intuitiveness of, hey, I want to hear how you're doing, man. I was ready to shut down the episode. Thought we were done. And that was a mini therapy session for me. Sharing with him, and then I ultimately with you, the listeners, some of what my family has had going on the last month. Hey, folks, Jaimie and I want to hear more from you. We want to hear how we're doing here on the podcast, and there's a few different ways for you to communicate that to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to come up in your dashboard. You can also rate and review us. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, there's 5 stars waiting on our main page. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating. That will cause Apple and Spotify to throw our podcast channel in front of other listeners. However, if we haven't earned 5 stars, you shouldn't give them to us, folks. You should keep your stars, and instead maybe shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make it better. Future Marriage Monday topics or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribes. Take care of each other. God bless.